Hello and welcome to this continuing exploring session as we continue our look at Edward IV Part 2. This is the second part of our look at Part 2, and Part 2 followed on from Part 1, which we looked at in 4 parts. It's quite confusing, but it is also very straightforward. Just follow the numbers. It's fine. It's fine. We are, I say, about a quarter of the way through this second part of the play, and we briefly sojourned in France, where some war-type stuff happened, and King Edward has now beetled back to England with some cash and not a lot of glory, and now none of that will ever be mentioned again. We are going to rattle forward now with, as in the Revels edition, scenes 8 to 12 today, back in England with this wonderful team of readers here who are going to help us engage with this text and see what comes out of it. We've been enjoying ourselves very much so far. Let's see if that is going to continue. So, reading today, King Edward as well as Jockie is...
I am Steve Longstaffe, scholar of early modern drama based in Lancaster in the UK.
Reading the chorus, Keeper, Queen Elizabeth and Dr. Shaw is...
Lois Potter, another scholar of early modern drama based in London.
That Dr. Shaw is not to be confused with Shaw and Clarence, read by...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, I'm a historian and I'm still in Yorkshire.
And that Shaw and Dr. Shaw are not to be confused with Jane Shaw, who's going to be read by...
Oh gosh, sorry, I've zoned out. Hi, I'm Eleanor, and I am an actor, producer and singer currently based in Suffolk.
And reading Stranguidge and Gloucester today is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
Reading Dorset and Vaux today is...
Hello, I'm Andrew Alton-Read. I'm an actor based in Essex.
And reading Brackenbury today is...
Hello, my name is Lynn Freitas. I'm a college composition teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
And finally, with portfolio today, only the messenger. We say only the messenger. Sometimes the messenger is one of the best parts. Reading messenger today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm still confused. as always. I mean, about the numbering and, the order.
Yes, you can be confused about whatever you like, Eric. We're not here to judge. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I am reading stage directions and generally moving things forward. Now, I hopefully haven't missed anybody out in the room, so we're going to leap straight into scene 8 as it's down, and we're going to start with a chorus. So we've just had an exciting excursion in France, but luckily we have this really nice full-stop play moving on chorus moment here to make sure that we're all in the same room. So, go chorus.
King Edward is returned home to England, and Louis, King of France, soon afterwards surprised both his subtle enemies, rewarding them with traitorous recompense. Now do we draw the curtain of our scene, to speak of Shaw and his fair wife again, with other matters thereupon depending. You must imagine, since you saw him last, prepared for travel, he hath been abroad, and seen the sundry fashions of the world, Ulysses-like, his country's love at length, hoping his wife's death, and to see his friends, such as did sorrow for his great mishaps, come home is he. But so unluckily, as he is like to lose his life thereby. His and her fortunes shall we now pursue, graced with your gentle sufferance and view.
Exit chorus. I'm going to pause there because there's a few things to unpack from that very brief bit of verse. Interesting bit of sort of motivation here for Shaw. We were talking about his mixed emotions and his confusion when he left to go abroad last time. I don't think we quite got hoping his wife's death.
Yeah.
That's quite an interesting sort of above chorus statement there. That seems a bit much to me. That's interesting. Those who were there for last time, did you feel that he actually wanted his wife's death? No. Sarah?
No, but I can see how he would have made that journey. But based on what he was doing last time and how completely self-involved he was, it's a bit of a jump, but it's not a jump that is unbelievable, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that? There are a few other things that this tiny speech has brought to my mind, but I'll see what else the room has. Anybody else have on that?
That whole bit of the speech seems very odd to me. I mean, his country's love at length doesn't seem to go with anything. I mean, that seems to be the motive for coming home, and yet it isn't grammatically really tied to either the previous or the following line. I just wonder if there's something funny about the text here.
This definitely is in terms of punctuation. So, but I think it does flow. It does make sense. Ulysses like "come home he is." I think that's where the beginning of that sentence begins and ends, and then you've got some stuff in between. It's also the fact that the final couple of lines of the chorus really does make it clear everybody should know where this story is going, and if you didn't know where this story is going, we've just told you where the story is going. It's not leaving us any doubt as to the trajectory, in case anyone didn't know their history. Not going well, but so unluckily, as he is like to lose his life thereby. Not looking good for sure. Not looking good for sure. Anything else want to throw in there? No. Okay, so let's get into some action. Let's re-encounter some characters we've met before many weeks ago. Scene 9, as we have it. So enter Mistress Shaw, Jane Shaw, with a Jockie, her man, and some other attendants, and they're going to be met in a moment by Sir Robert Brackenbury.
Have you bestowed our small benevolence on the poor prisoners in the common jail of the White Lion and the King's Bench?
Yes, forsooth.
What prison's this?
It's Marshalsea. Forsooth.
Enter Sir Robert Brackenbury.
Well met, fair lady, in the happiest time and choicest place that my desire could wish. Without offence, where have you been this way?
To take the air here in St. George's Fields, Sir Robert Brackenbury, and to visit some poor patients that cannot visit me.
Are you a physician?
Aye, a simple one.
What disease cure ye?
Faith, none perfectly. My physic doth hot mitigate the pain a little while, and then it comes again.
Sweet Mistress Shaw, I understand ye not.
Master Lieutenant, I believe you well.
Good faith, Sir Robert Brobenbelly, my mistress speaks deftly and truly, for she has been till see those that cannot come to see her, and these patients perforce. The prisoners, man, in the twa prisons, and she's given them her siller and a gear to bid them food.
Gramercies, Jockie, thou resolvest my doubt. A comfort ministering kind physician that once a week in her own person visits the prisons and the poor in the hospitals, in London or near London every way, whose purse is open to the hungry soul, whose piteous heart saves many a tall man's life.
Peace, good Sir Robert, 'tis not worthy praise, nor yet worth thanks. That is of duty done. For you know well, the world doth know too well, that all the coals of my poor charity cannot consume the scandal of my name. What remedy? Well, tell me, gentle knight, what meant your kind salute and gentle speed? At our first meeting, when you seemed to bless the time and place of our encounter here.
Lady, there lies here prisoned in the Marshalsea a gentleman of good parents and good descent, my dear near kinsman, Captain Henry Stranguidge, as tall a skillful navigator tried as e'er set foot in any ship at sea, whose luck it was to take a prize of France, as he from Rochelle was for London bound. for which, except his pardon be obtained by some especial favourite of the king, he and his crew, a company of proper men, are sure to die, because 'twas since the league.
Let me see him and all his company.
Keeper, bring forth the captain and his crew.
And so enter the keeper, Vaux, the Stranguidge, Shaw, disguised, and 3 more fettered.
Oh, fail the deal that sick bonny men should be hampered like blue jades. Waits me for ye, good lads.
Aye, cousin Harry, this is Mistress Shore, peerless in court for beauty, bounty, pity.
And Jane views them all.
And if she cannot save thee, thou must die.
Will she, if she can?
Aye, cousin Stranguidge, aye.
O torment worse than death, to see her face that caused her shame, and my unjust disgrace. Oh, that our mutual eyes were basilisks to kill each other at their interview.
How like ye him, lady? Have ye viewed them well?
I pity him and that same proper man that turns his back, ashamed of his distress.
Ashamed of thee, cause of my heaviness.
And all the rest. Oh, were the king returned, there might be hope, but ere his coming home they may be tried, condemned, and judged, and dead.
I am condemned by sentence of defame. Oh, were I dead, I might not see my shame.
Your credit, lady, may prolong their trial. What judge is he that will give you denial?
I'll rack my credit and will launch my crowns to save their lives if they have done no murder.
Oh, thou hast cracked thy credit with a crown and murdered me, poor Matthew Shaw, alive.
Fair lady, we did shed no drop of blood, nor cast one Frenchman overboard, and yet because the league was made before the fact, which we poor seamen, God knows, never heard, we doubt our lives. Yea, though we should restore treble the value that we took, and more. 'Twas lawful prize when I put out to sea, and warranted in my commission. The kings are since combined in amity, long may it last, and I unwittingly have took a Frenchman since the truce was ta'en. And if I die, veer one day I must, and God will pardon all my sins, I trust. My grief will be for these poor, harmless men who thought my warrant might suborn the deed. Chiefly that gentleman that stands sadly there, who on my soul was but a passenger.
Well, Captain Stranguidge, were the king at home, I could say more.
Lady, he's come ashore. Last night at Dover, my boy came from thence and saw his highness land.
Then courage, sirs. I'll use my fairest means to save your lives. In the main season, spend that for my sake.
And she gives her purse. Enter the Lord Marquis Dorset and claps her on the shoulder.
By your leave, Mistress Shaw, I have taken pains to find you out. Come, you will go with me.
Whither, my lord?
Unto the Queen, my mother.
Good my Lord Marquis Dorset, wrong me not.
I cannot wrong thee, as thou wrongst my mother. I bring thee to her. Let her use her pleasure.
Against my will, I wrong her, good my lord, yet am ashamed to see her majesty. Sweet lord, excuse me, say ye saw me not.
I shall delude my mother for a whore. No, Mistress Shaw, ye must go to the Queen.
Must I, my lord? What will she do to me? Use violence on me now the king's away? Alas, my lord, behold this shower of tears, which kind King Edward would compassionate. Bring me not to her. She will slit my nose, or mark my face, or spurn me unto death. Oh, look on me, lord. Can you find in your heart to have me spoiled that never thought you harm? Or rather with your rapier run me through than carry me to the displeased queen?
Oh, hadst thou never broke thy vow to me, from fear and wrong had I defended thee.
I am inexorable. Therefore arise and go with me. What rascal crew is this? Mistress Shaw's suitors? Such slaves make her proud. What? Sir Robert Brackenbury. Your surest too?
No surest but to save my cousin's life.
Then I'll be hanged if he escapes for this. The rather for you means to Mistress Shaw. My mother can do nothing. This whore all. Come away, minion. You shall prate no more.
Pray for me, friends, and I will pray for you. God send you better hap than I expect. Go to my lodging, you, and, if I perish, take what is in there in lieu of your true service.
No, on my soul, I'll ne'er forsake my good mistress, till I've seen the worst that spite can do her.
And exit Marquis of Dorset, Jane Shaw, and their attendants, etc.
For all the wrong that thou hast done for me, they should not hurt thee, yet if I were free.
See, cousin Stranguidge, how the case is changed. She that should help thee cannot help herself.
What remedy? The God of heaven helps all. What say ye, mates? Our hope of life is dashed, now none but God. Let's put our trust in him, and every man repent him of his sin. And as together we have lived like men, so like tall men together, let us die. The best is, if we die for this offence, our ignorance shall plead our innocence.
Your meat is ready, Captain. You must in.
Must I? I will. Cousin, what will you do?
Visit you soon, but now I will to court to see what shall become of Mr. Shore.
God speed you well.
Come, sir, will you go in?
I'll eat no meat. Give me leave to walk here.
And everybody exits except for Shaw.
Am I now left alone? No. Millions of miseries attend me everywhere. Oh, Matthew Shaw, how doth all-seeing heaven punish some sin from thy blind conscience hid, inflicting pain where all thy pleasure was, and by my wife came all these woes to pass. She falsed her faith and brake her wedlock's band. Her honours fallen, how could my credit stand? Oh, yet will I not, poor Jane, on thee exclaim. Though guilty thou, I guiltless suffer shame. I left this land, too little for my grief. Returning am accounted as a thief, who in that ship came but a passenger to see my friends, hoping the death of her, at sight of whom some sparks of former love, hid in affection's ashes, pity move, kindling compassion from my broken heart. Oh, that pleads to think on her ensuing smart. Oh, see weak women's imperfections that leave their husbands safe protections, hazarding all on strangers' flatteries, whose lust allied leaves them to miseries. See what dishonour breach of wedlock brings, which is not safe, even in the arms of kings. Thus do I, Jane, lament thy present state, wishing my tears thy torments might abate.
Exit Shaw. Okay, so that follows up from, but also adds a bit more depth to what the chorus was saying about Shaw, hoping the death of her in that sort of that way. And then, but the moment he sees her, no. It's all a bit about him, isn't it?
He's conflicted, poor man.
Yeah,
He loves her.
He does, but he can't quite get past the shame she has brought on him is his view on this, and so yeah, he's sort of Helen's disagreeing. I say it to make Helen say things. I also didn't call on you earlier, so more on Shaw, Helen.
I think he feels that death would be a good end for her. I mean, it's the Lucrece thing, isn't it? Death before dishonour. But on the other hand, I really feel he loves her, and he loves her still. And he keeps coming back to, if I was free, I would protect you from whatever's going on. I mean, their problem was that they didn't talk to each other about the awful situation they found themselves in.
Well, but it wouldn't
Because
have
there
done
was-
good.
Because there was no communication between them, he never got the opportunity to say, if you want to turn him down, and I will fly away with you.
Lois.
Well, it wouldn't have done any good. I mean, the whole scene of the previous play, it was just so obvious that Edward was going to get whatever he wanted. And I mean, Matthew Shore gives up really the minute he hears that the king is after her, and he's quite right. I mean, he leaves the country. He could have, I suppose, tried to take her with him, but it seems highly unlikely. I mean, the whole situation was hopeless, which is what makes it feel so tragic. No, I think, and he can't get out of the fact that he's living in the early modern period and not nowadays. I mean, he has the, as far as I can see, perfectly exemplary views for that period, but not for ours.
Didn't they talk about us fleeing the country together? I seem to recall that being a thing and choosing not to. So it's interesting. Choices are available. It's not that they're completely trapped. Lynn.
They didn't, as I remember in part one, they didn't talk about leaving together until after she had already become the king's mistress. And that's sort of a Rubicon. It's like once she's slept with another man, their marriage is irretrievably damaged. So they did talk about running away together before the affair began. I don't.
Yeah, they didn't communicate properly at all. In fact, there were minor white lies being thrown around left, right, and centre before the affair actually happened. So, Eric, I saw a hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's interesting how he does this thing, like, I wish she was dead, whatever. I wish, I could help you and all that. But he hasn't presented an alternative before that. Like, I mean, or like sort of in the first part of these two plays, we've not seen like sort of him going, yeah, we can totally escape, or like we can totally do this, or sort of like, because how do you deny the king? It's basically what Lois was saying. You can't really, you're either outlawed and sort of running for your life, or kind of not, but forced to sort of deal with this.
Sarah has put some words in chat. Following Shaw, past the sick bucket. Would you like to elaborate on your feelings about Shaw? You're muted at the moment, so I don't know if you were swearing and the computer just cut you out.
I was just quietly swearing under my breath there. Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, yes, on the one hand, there is nothing he can do because this is the time and Edward is the king. And so, yeah. But then the thing is, all this protesting about how he wishes he was dead and she was dead and everybody should be dead and that would be so much better. Like, really? If he's that genuinely, if he feels that genuinely, then why did he not just challenge Edward at the time? Because the thing is, yes, probably he'd have got his head cut off. But then if he's so invested in, oh, everybody should be dead, it would be so much better, then, he could have done that. That would have been an option. It would have been a bad option for staying alive, but he could have done it. So now the fact that he's protesting after the event, I'm just like, oh, yeah, right, whatever. It's always easier to sort of like, moan about these things after the event, but he's not actually doing anything about it. And to be fair, he probably can't do anything about it now. But like,
yeah, I was going to say the situation he's currently in is not good.
It's not good, but then like, why not just apply himself to the situation he's in rather than whine about his, I was going to say ex-wife.
If you're imprisoned, I'm not misunderstanding this. He is with the other people who are imprisoned here. Yeah. So self-pity, I think, is a perfectly reasonable sort of, in a sense, rational response to being, what can he do? Admit, hi wife. I would have thought within his mindset, revealing himself at this moment would be just impossible for him.
Within his mindset. Absolutely. But there are other choices available, which would actually make him a better human being, is what I'm saying. even within the situation that he finds himself.
I'll go to Stephen.
Yes, but on the other hand, presumably there is a story that has to be followed here, in the sense that, you know, it's as we said last time, it's a well-known story, and so the writer and the company are in the position of having to make the best sense of what actually happened. Presumably, I don't know. So, you know, this is what happened to him, and then the question is, how do we get the psychology for that? To make it the most interesting play. It's a peculiar thing with history plays, perhaps. I don't know. I'm assuming that maybe there were things about him that needed to be explained, and that this is their best shot at explaining them.
I think as a character he functions, you know, as a depiction of this kind of figure within this kind of society. He's there's nothing contradictory about what he's doing at all. He functions very well. Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think as a character, he's brilliant. His psychology is perfect for the sort of person he is. I'm just like, oh God, he's one of them.
Yes, it's a question of audience response, I think, if that's our question here. Moving the subject slightly on. So we've got Jane turning up to do good works, but she's not empowered in the absence of the king. I mean, that's an interesting question about how much power does Jane have. She has this sort of status, but she doesn't have status, you know, to free prisoners or anything. She might be able to make their life a little bit easier, but she can't free them. And you know, the nature of she's trying to do good works here, and what the play is presenting about that. I'll ask everyone to discuss in a moment. But I want to lead into that before we get on to talking about Jane. I just want to talk about the Marquis Dorset. What a git! What a wonderfully written git. It really is. You know, the whole thing. You've got to go and talk to the Queen summoned you, and it's just, this is all. Yeah, really quite uncomfortable in really interesting ways. Thoughts from the room on that? Jane or Dorset or all of those things? Eric?
Well, it's kind of like having to bring the younger mistress or like the younger bride. Okay, no, she's not a bride, but I mean, you know, the modern equivalent, I think, would be like someone marrying a younger person after having divorced his first wife, and then you have to present the young bride to the mother-in-law, who's like, why did you divorce this person, blah blah, and that kind of sort of like that kind of demonizing of women as well. But also sort of she has a reputation for not making people's life easy.
It's really interesting, you know, Dorset, you know, here's Jane trying to do good works, and what does Dorset say? Oh, all these men are they lined up for a go in a moment? Are they? You know, are they all your next suitors? I mean, there's something really horrible about what Dorset's doing there. You know, in his mind, of course, within that context, he feels probably he's got cause, but again, it still doesn't make him desperately nice. Lynn.
Yeah. My understanding of the way the situation was perceived at the time is that Elizabeth Woodville Grey's family was not well liked by either the aristocracy or kind of the population in general. She had this enormous, rapacious family that she brought into the sort of royal orbit. She had something like 6 brothers and sisters who all made very advantageous marriages. She had a couple of adult sons by now, of which Dorset is one, who enjoyed all these preferments. I mean, they were considered upstarts. Yeah, so it's just really hard for me to even give Dorset a fair shake because he's part of that you know, all that unearned privilege problem. So but yeah, I kind of dislike him out of the gate without even, sorry.
And the tightrope that Jane is walking through this scene as well. You know, she's trying to do good. She's trying to, and how did Jane feel to you, Eleanor? Reading Jane herself.
I was actually putting something in the chat as well, but I'll say it out loud now. I was
Excellent.
saying that she's super calm-ish compared to other characters. You know, literally Dorset's just ripping into her, and like, yeah, now I'll take you to the Queen, and she seems super calm-ish about the entire thing, whereas other characters that may be written would have gone more like drastic and much more like, oh my gosh, why would you do this? So there is a sense of decorum and royalty about all this with all her work. If this is the last time they see her, then it seems like, well, remember that I am this very patient and calm person rather than the person that's going to absolutely have a moment on what I'm assuming a beach or whatever. But yeah, super calm for someone who's just been called a whore live in front of everyone.
Yeah, and it's the way she's trying to maneuver it, saying, "Don't make me go to the Queen. Just say you didn't see me." I really like that as a line. It's just, you know, come on, you know, work with me here. You know, this is just going to be a really awkward encounter, and maybe we can just move on. The final element to this scene, because this scene contains multitudes. So we've also have the prisoners and the other prisoners, and you know, their case at the Marshalsea, and you know what's going to happen with them. We have this speech from Stranguidge. We also have Jockie in the scene. I don't know how many people were following. I mean, I what Jockie was saying. I don't know. Stephen, did you know what you were saying? Because it is written in a way for the viewers at home. It is written in a lot of it's written in dialect. So it's tricksy.
It doesn't really fit the way you do a Scottish accent nowadays in some places. I think some of the vowels appear to be different. So maybe I should acquaint myself with more different Scottish accents.
Or there might be some minor shifts in how it's written as well, between the original printing and how it's come to us. And all sorts of questions. Anyone know what Jockie was actually saying?
Most of the time it made sense. It's just you couldn't have cold read it. I mean, I kind of read ahead, and after not being able to make sense of cold reading it, and it kind of made sense.
Yeah. Good. And then the sort of the nature of the other prisoners here, and again we're getting this question of different statuses appearing in these plays. So it's quite nice that the people who are arrested seem nice chaps. They seem nice enough. Lois.
Yeah, that's something that actually comes up in another Heywood play, at least one other one, Fortune by Land and by Sea. The situation of people who I think take prizes, who are privateers against the Spaniards, and then suddenly there's a peace treaty and they've turned into pirates. I mean, this happened to a lot of people after 1604, when the peace treaty with Spain was signed, and I think he writes about that in Fortune by Land and by Sea. I'm not sure what he's referring to here, because I think this play is earlier, but I think the situation kept coming up, you know, because it's okay to attack another ship if it's the enemy country, but if it's not the enemy country, then you're just a pirate and you can be executed.
Sarah.
I did like the fact that my character, one of the protestations about his innocence was, I didn't even throw one Frenchman overboard. That if I'd realised that line was coming up, I'd have done more with it. But I just thought that was hilarious, and you could have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, 2 or 3, then that'd be a very different story, wouldn't it?
But but not even one.
Not even one. Okay. Any additional thoughts about this scene? I think there's probably an awful lot more we can say. Eric.
I think it's interesting how Stranguidge anyway.
Nobody's come to a firm decision on that.
Yeah, how he's actually got like a character rather than just being like some, because he's gonna die apparently, or maybe not. We don't know later on, but he's condemned anyway. And I found it interesting that they actually took the time to color him in rather than sort of go, yeah, he's gonna die, we don't really care.
Yes, because they probably structurally don't need to create other prisoners, because we've got one prisoner who we are invested in surviving already, because we've got Shaw. So it is interesting and nice. I mean, I think this play has constantly thrown up even the small characters being given something to do in a genuine way, and so that seems to be a continuation of this author. Sarah.
Yeah, and once again, we talked about this yesterday, but once again, there was a lovely little character sketch before Stranguidge actually came on. We had this great little description of him and his situation, and it was so condensed. But it was, for me, cold reading this and playing that role, I was like, oh, great, this is great. I know exactly how to play him now. So the play is just full of that, and it's great that the playwright takes the time to do that, for his actors. It does make me wonder. I know you don't care about who the authors are, but it does make me wonder if this playwright was also an actor, because he seems to be putting in a lot of stuff that actors need.
And of course,
of them. Yeah, there's a high probability of that, or at least intimately connected. Lois.
Well, I was just saying, Heywood was an actor, and he played comic roles. He might have played Jockie.
Lois, you were going to say something anyway, or you had your hand up.
I think that was what I was going to say, actually. I mean, that I'd also been very struck by what good parts there are, even the small parts. And it does seem like somebody who doesn't want to waste actors' time by making them stand around saying nothing very much, but actually makes their parts interesting.
Okay, let's go and meet some more people, or re-meet some people who we haven't met for a while. We're going to jump to scene 10, and following on pretty much exactly from where people left last time, Shaw remained on stage to make sure everyone had a chance to get themselves ready to come back on again. Scene 10, enter the Queen, Marquis of Dorset, leading Mistress Shaw, who falls down on her knees before the Queen, fearful and weeping.
Now, as I am a queen, a goodly creature, son, how was she attended? Where found you her?
Madam, I found her at the Marshalsea, going to visit the poor prisoners. As she came by, having been to take the air, and there the keeper told me she oft deals such bounteous alms as seldom hath been seen.
Now, before God, she would make a gallant queen. But good son Dorset, stand aside a while. God save your majesty, my Lady Shore. My Lady Shore, said I. Oh, blasphemy to wrong your title with a lady's name. Queen Shore, nay, rather Empress Shore. God save your grace, your majesty, your highness. Lord, I want titles. You must pardon me. What? You kneel there, King Edward's bedfellow? And I, your subject, sit? Fie, for shame. Come, take your place, and I'll kneel where you do. I may take your place. You have taken mine. Good Lord, that you will so debase yourself. I'm sure that you are our sister queen, at least. Nay, that you are. Then let us sit together.
Great Queen, yet hear me, if my sin committed have not stopped up all passage to your mercy, to tell the wrongs that I have done your highness might make revenge exceed extremity. Oh, had I words or tongue to utter it, to plead my woman's weakness and his strength that was the only worker of my fall, even innocence herself would blush for shame. Once to be named or spoken of in this, let them expect for mercy whose offence may but be called sin. Oh, mine is more. Prostrate as earth before your highness's feet, inflict what torments you shall think most meet.
Spurn the whore, mother. Tear those enticing eyes that robbed you of King Edward's dearest love. Mangle those locks, the baits to his desires. Let me come to her, you but stand and talk, as if revenge consisted but in words.
Son, stand aloof and do not trouble me. Alas, poor soul, as much ado have I to forbear tears to keep her company. Yet once more will I to my former humour. Why, as I am, think that thou wert a queen, and I, as thou, shouldst wrong thy princely bed, and win the king thy husband, as thou mine, would it not sting thy soul? Or if that I, being a queen, while thou didst love thy husband, should but have done as thou hast done to me, would it not grieve thee? Yes, I warrant thee. There's not the meanest woman that doth live, but if she like and love her husband well, she'd rather feel his warm limbs in her bed than see him in the arms of any queen. You are flesh and blood as we, and we as you, and all alike in our affections, though majesty makes us the more ambitious. What 'tis to fall into so great a hand, knowledge might teach thee. There was once a king, Henry II, who did keep his leman caged up in Woodstock in a labyrinth. His queen yet got a trick to find her out, and how she used her, I'm sure thou hast heard. Thou art not mewed up in some secret place, but kept in court here underneath my nose. Now, in the absence of my lord the king, have I not time most fitting for revenge? Fair Rosamond, she a pure virgin was, until the king seduced her to his will. She wronged but one bed, only the angry queen's. But thou hast wronged two, mine and thy husband's. Oh, be thine own judge, and now in justice see what due revenge I ought to take on thee.
Even what you will, great queen, here do I lie, humble and prostrate at your highness's feet. Inflict on me what may revenge your wrong. With never lamb abode more patiently than I will do. Call all your griefs to mind, and do even what you will, or how likes you, I will not stir. I will not shriek or cry. Be it torture, poison, any punishment, was never dove or turtle more submiss than I will be unto your chastisement.
Fetched I her for this. Mother, let me come to her. And what compassion will not suffer you to do to her, refer the same to me.
Touch her not, son, upon thy life I charge thee, but keep off still if thou wilt have my love.
And exit the Marquis of Dorset.
I'm glad to hear ye are so well resolved to bear the burthen of my just displeasure.
She draws forth a knife, and making as though she meant to spoil her face, runs to her, and falling on her knees, embraces and kisses her, casting away the knife.
Thus then I'll do. Alas, poor soul, shall I weep with thee? Faith, poor heart, I will. Be of good comfort, thou shalt have no harm. But if that kisses have the power to kill thee, thus, and thus 100 times I'll stab thee. Jane, I forgive thee. What fort is so strong, but with besieging he will batter it? Weep not, sweet Jane, alas, I know thy sex, touched with the self-same weakness that thou art. And if my state had been as mean as thine, and such a beauty to allure his eye, though I may promise much to mine own strength, what might have happed to me I cannot tell. Nay, fear not, for I speak it with my heart, and in thy sorrow truly bear a part.
Most high and mighty queen, may I believe there can be found such mercy in a woman? And in a queen more than in a wife, so deeply wronged as I have wronged you? In this bright crystal mirror of your mercy, I see the greatness of my sin the more, and makes my fault more odious in mine eyes. Your princely pity now doth wound me more than all your threatenings ever did before.
Rise, my sweet Jane, I say thou shalt not kneel. Oh, God forbid that Edward's queen should hate her whom she knows he doth so dearly love. My love to her may purchase me his love. Jane, speak well to the king of me and mine. Remember not my son's or hasty speech. Thou art my sister, and I love thee so. I know thou mayst do much with my dear lord. Speak well of us to him in any case, and I and mine will love and cherish thee.
All I can do is all too little too, but to requite the least part of this grace, The dearest thoughts that harbour in this breast shall in your service only be expressed.
And we're just going to pause there. The scene is not over, but my God, hasn't quite a lot just happened there? And yeah, that's the play's thrown us a few curveballs there in most pleasing directions, because we've been having a few problems with the moments of the sexual politics going on here, and yet we have this scene. We've got the Queen. We've got Dorset being even more of a git. I mean, he's yeah, just getting worse, and sort of in the room constantly, and we have all this misdirection, and to a very violent moment, which is then turned, and then we see here is the question of who has more power, and you have a moment where the Queen is begging a favour of Jane. So the dynamics of this scene is fascinating. It's doing all sorts of work, and is yeah, really very impressive in so many ways. Who wants to jump in first? Much to say, I'm sure. Lynn.
Oh gosh, just like what a scene for two women from this period. What a showstopper.
Yeah.
Just my feeling about it. I mean, especially for Queen Elizabeth, her arc in that scene is really remarkable. I mean, she starts out so mean and sarcastic. I mean, oh, Queen Jane, she's that's just cruel. That has just got to hurt when she's twitting her rival with the fact that, oh, you're a nobody, but I have to treat you like a queen. It's just, yeah, the sarcasm in that first long section it's just cruel. And then she flips and says, no, we're both kind of the victim here. Yeah, so like, yeah, what an emotional scene, and what a fun this would be for these two actors to play. Yeah, and oh god, I was going to say something else, but yeah, and the question that Robert brought up of, because the women have no official authority, all they have is unofficial influence. Who's really in the more who's really in the power position here? The person who has the king's favor at the moment, or the person who has an official recognized marriage partnership with him? So the ambiguity of the power dynamics is also super interesting. Like, what a scene.
Yeah, and it's the fact that, the performative nature of what Queen Elizabeth, the cruel stuff she's doing at the beginning, is because Dorset's in the room. It's like she has to prove to Dorset that she's going to, really go for, maybe she shows the knife to Dorset before he goes, like going, right. Because, Dorset, what's Dorset suggesting there is really gets increasingly aggressive and nasty, and yeah, it's like she's got to get him out of the room, and by proving that she could be nasty too. And again, it's like she doesn't seem to have the power over her own family, in ways perhaps. Other thoughts, Lois?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about an arc. It's really quite. There's lots of room for interpretation there. Since I was reading it cold, I did pretty much just play the opening bit as if she was a thoroughly angry bitch. But and I think she could be putting on an act there, or this could in fact be exactly how she's feeling, or it could be a bit of both. She's putting on an act, but in fact this is how she's feeling, and it's a great opportunity to express it. And then she does have that one aside indicating that she's actually feeling very sorry for Jane, which is obviously a clue to the audience. But then, and then there's that rather pathetic realization that, in fact, she couldn't really, I mean, realistically speaking, if she had slashed Jane's face and the king had come back and found that she'd done it, I mean, what sort of state would she be in, and her whole family? But it's everything is happening, I think, for the sake of stage effect, but it nevertheless feels real. It feels as if you could make sense of it all psychologically.
Other thoughts, Eric?
Didn't we have a similar scene in the first play where the thing that was done for the public eye and the thing that was done for private, like, consumption, were two very different things? Like, sort of, King Don going, "Yeah, this is my bride mother, and this is who I've chosen, and I don't care." And then much later, like, a few scenes later, he kind of goes, "Oh, no, well, hello there." Or like, "Oh, Jane, hello there," and that kind of stuff. Whereas, like, you kind of have that division of, like, private and public.
Yeah, and it's another element of the disguising that keeps coming up in this play as well. That everything seems to be performative when you're in the royal family, and the need to disguise your intentions, disguise yourself literally as well as figuratively. There's all sorts of interconnections between, these are all part of the dynamics of the play overall, which I really like. Other thoughts, Stephen?
Just that line, "Stand aloof and do not trouble me." I think that's a wonderful line to Dorset, because that's yet another layer at play, isn't it? Which is the sort of, the mother rebuking the son, "Get out of my face, do not trouble me."
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's placed in the scene as well. It's kind of like, at that point we don't know where we are with her, really, where it's going, because the scene travels such a lot. So I think Dorset is also there, could be played as, not just simply a kind of pantomime villain, but to enrich our understanding of the central character of the Queen.
Yes, I don't think that Dorset is cardboard cutout. I mean, his nastiness feels very real. It feels like, someone who, because he's not, he's son from a previous marriage. He's not offspring of the king. He has, again, a similarly placed to one sideness of his power. So maybe
she just puts him in a box.
Yeah.
Stand aloof. Do not trouble me. Go and sit on the psychopath step, or whatever it is. She deals with him so beautifully, and he comes back in again, kind of the Har captain. Let me kill the prisoners, Captain Har, and she deals with him again,
So I'm just wondering, where does one put one's psychopath steps, and what color stone do you use? Sorry. Any other thoughts before we finish the scene? Because we haven't finished the scene yet. No. Okay. So dynamics of the scene changes even more, having mentioned him. And to be fair, fabulous though the scene is, it does fail the Bechdel test. King Edward, who they've been talking about, comes in angrily, his lords following.
"What is my Jane with her? It is too true. See where she hath her down upon her knees. What? How now, Bess? Will you wrong my Jane? Oh, come hither, love. What has she done to thee?"
Jane falls on her knees to the king.
Royal Edward, love thy beauteous queen, the only perfect mirror of her kind, for all the choicest virtues can be named. Oh, let not my bewitching looks withdraw your dear affections from your dearer queen, but to requite the grace that she hath shown to me, the worthless creature on this earth, to banish me the court immediately. Great king, let me but beg one boon of thee, that Shaw's wife ne'er do her more injury.
As Jane Shaw kneels on one side of the king, the Queen steps and kneels on the other.
Nay then, I'll beg against her, Royal Edward. Love thy Jane still, nay more, if more may be. And this is all the harm that at my hands she shall endure for it. Oh, where my Edward loves, it ill beseems his queen to grudge thereat.
"Sayest thou me so, Bess? On my kingly word, Edward will honour thee in heart for this. Trust me, Bess, I greatly was afraid I should not find ye in so good a tune. And now, what would our constable of the Tower?"
Enter Sir Robert Brackenbury if he hasn't already entered.
The Queen and Mistress Shore do know my suit.
It is for Stranguidge and his men at sea. Edward, needs must you pardon them.
Have I not vowed the contrary already? 'Tis honour me, where I have made a league. My word is passed. They shall suffer death, or never more let me see France again.
Oh, why? There is one was but a passenger. Shall he die too?
Pass me no passage, Jane. Where he in company, he dies for company.
But Jane, entreat for them.
Come, Edward, I must not take this answer. Needs must I have some grace for Stranguidge.
Why, Jane? Have I not denied my queen? What is, Jane, I would deny to thee? I prithee, Brackenbury, be thou not displeased. My word is passed. Not one of them shall live. Not one. Go and see them forthwith put to death.
And scene. So, yes, what's really interesting about this, we have where we think the scene is going again. This scene keeps doing little reverse ferrets. We have this tableau, the two queens kneel, they're swayed. I hate to think what's going on in Edward's mind. I can guess what's going on in his mind at this particular moment. But there are other lords in the room, thank God.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, but it's what immediately leapt to just that's what Edward's thinking. But we then have return to this moment of actually how much power do these two women have, and actually none. This scene absolutely demonstrates that at the end of Edward just going, no, I'm king, I've said it, tough. And yeah, as a series of power dynamics demonstrating placement of power, this scene has just so many different layers to that dynamic. Thoughts on the room? Lynn and then Eric.
Yeah, we were talking about scene 9 and how skillfully the dramatist seems to create a kind of impression of complex humanity even for the tiny parts. And I didn't get a chance to mention it then, but Brackenbury is one of those. Here he is in this impossible position. He's got a job at whatever it is, keeper of the tower, the king's jailer, and someone he's related to is one of his prisoners. Yeah, so he's also in this really horrible position where he's going to be obliged to see to the execution of someone in his family. So again, all these little parts that get a little meat, that get a little emotional investment. That's something I really have to admire about this play.
Eric.
I was going to say that it's interesting how King Edward does this thing that a lot of modern day politicians do, where like, I said it, therefore it's law, and I will not retract it. I will not apologize, that kind of thing. It's very sort of, it's, I don't know, politicians do this. Yeah.
Yes, no U-turn until the U-turn happens. Absolutely not. Sarah.
Yeah, well, also, I get the impression, I mean, I don't know, I could be fishing here, because he does say to the Queen, first of all, like, no, I can't do it because I'm not going to make a U-turn. But I do feel there's a certain amount of like, it's that thing of like, he wants them to be friends because, oh God, I've got these two women and they're warring. Why can't everyone be friends? It'd be so much, I'll feel so much better. I'll feel so much easier, and I'll get less stress and hassle if they're friends. And then the minute they kind of show that they are friends, he's like, oh, right, okay. So you're friends, but I don't actually want you to, I don't want any of the consequences that come with you actually being genuinely friends, because actually if the pair of you gang up on me, I've got to put both of you in your place. So it's just beautifully done. Like the psychology of it is fantastic, because that's a dynamic that you see, you know, in human nature played out in all sorts of different ways, and it's just really well done with because there are crowns involved. It takes a sort of schoolyard dynamic almost, and elevates it to this amazing stage.
Lois.
Yes, the action is very sort of schematic and symbolic. I mean, first Jane kneeling to the Queen saying, "Why don't you just sit by me?" Then the moving around, apparently about to stab her. Then the King coming in, and then this awful thing of two women kneeling to this one man who has all the power. I mean, it really does make it crystal clear what's going on.
Other thoughts? Stephen?
It put me in mind of, that what you see on tombs, where you have, there's a sort of praying pose, isn't there? This kind of, supplication thing. So there's perhaps an element of piety there as well, which would serve to contrast between the king and the two women.
It's this tableau has been set up. Eric?
Yeah, there was that. Now that Stephen said it, there was this sort of, I don't know, grave tomb site in Glasgow. I can't remember what churchyard it was in anyway, but it was this guy who had divorced his first wife and married his mistress, and he'd been buried in between them. But he decided to be buried like in the same grave as the one he preferred, and actually like put shade in the on the engraving towards his first wife, and you're like, but you're gonna die. What is this? What? Yeah. How long can you keep a grudge?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Helen.
Interesting referral back to Henry II, whose queen killed Rosamond, the king's mistress, or is popularly supposed to have done so.
Yeah, it's a callback because it's not a period that I know very much about, so it is a reference that largely doesn't land for me personally, anyway, because it's only.
Have you seen The Lion in Winter?
Yeah, a long
She
time
goes
ago.
on about it at great length.
Yeah, I'm sure. Lois.
Yeah, they go on about it in Look About You as well. And in fact, I think in Locrine, there was a bit where the king was talking about where he was keeping his mistress, that femme fatale. And I think that seemed to me like an echo of the Rosamond situation, because he was describing this sort of bower, or this amazing kind of place that he made for her to be hidden away in so he could visit her. Yeah, it's really interesting that that's, I think, a writer who's also something of a historian and likes drawing these parallels.
Yeah, calling the possibility of Monday getting his grubby little digits over some of it. Anyway, we'll come to that another time probably. We do need to move forward now. Scene 11 is 3 people we've never met. New characters, people. So, scene 11, we have enter the Dukes of Clarence, Gloucester, and Dr. Shaw. Not Shaw, Shaw. Okay, so that's Clarence, Gloucester, and Dr. Shaw.
I cannot see this prophecy you speak of should any way so much displease the king. And yet I promise you, good brother Clarence, 'tis such a letter as concerns us both, that G should put away King Edward's children and sit upon his throne. That G should. Well.
God bless the king and these 2 sweet young princes.
Amen, good brother Clarence.
Amen.
And send them all to heaven shortly, I beseech him.
The king's much troubled in his sickness with it.
I promise you he is, and very much. But Dr. Shaw, who prophesies that G should be so sadly ominous to us?
My Lord of Gloucester, I received the same from old Friar Anselm of St. Bartholomew's.
Great learned man he was, and as I have heard, hath prophesied of very many things. I promise you it troubles me. I hope in me his prophecy is true.
And so it does, I tell you, Brother Gloucester.
I am sure it does, for look you, Brother Clarence, we know not how his highness will apply it. We are but two, yourself, my lord and I. Should the young princess fail, which God defend.
Which God defend.
Which God defend.
But they should be cut off. Amen, amen. You, brother, first, and should your issue fail, poor I am next, the youngest of the three. But how far I am from a thought of that, heaven witness with me, that I wish you dead.
Brother, I durst be sworn.
God bless you all. I take you to him if it be his will. Now, brother, this prophecy of G, troubling the king, he may as well apply it unto Gloucester, my dukedom's name, if he be jealous, as unto George, your name, good brother Clarence. God help, if faith it troubles me. You would not think how that any of you live.
I cannot choose. How innocent I am, and how unspotted are my loyal thoughts unto his highness and those sweet young princes. God be my record.
Oh, who, you? I durst answer for you, but I shall cut you off ere it be long. But, Reverend Doctor, you can only tell, being his highness' confessor, how he takes it. Sure, you know my mind, a villain like myself.
My Lord of Clarence, I must tell your lordship, his highness is much troubled in his sickness with this same prophecy of G. Who is this G? Oft times he will demand, then will he sigh and name his brother George, yourself, my lord, and then he strikes his breast, I promise you. This morning, in the extremest of his fit, he lay so still, we all thought he had slept, when suddenly, George is the G, quoth he, and gave a groan and turned his face away.
God be my witness, witness with my soul, my just and upright thoughts to him and his. I stand so guiltless and so innocent, as I could wish my breast to be transparent, and my thoughts written in great letters there. The world might read the secrets of my soul.
Ah, brother Clarence, when you are suspected. Well, it is a wicked world the while. But shall I tell you, brother, in plain terms, I fear yourself, and I have enemies about the king. God pardon them. The world was never worse to be trusted. Oh, brother George, where is that love that was? Ah, it is banished, brother, from the world. Ah, conscience and true brotherhood, 'tis gone, brother. I am your friend. I am your loving brother, your own self, and love you as my soul. Use me in what you please, and you shall see I'll do a brother's part. Send you to heaven, I hope, ere it be long. I am a true stooped villain as ever lived.
I know you will. Then, brother, I beseech you, plead you mine innocence unto the king. And in meantime, to tell my loyalty, I'll keep within my house at Baynard's castle until I hear how my dread sovereign takes it.
Do so, good brother.
Farewell, good brother Gloucester.
My tears will scarcely let me take my leave, I love you so. Farewell, sweet George.
And exit Clarence.
So, is he gone? Now, sure, 'tis in thy power to bind me to thee everlastingly, and there is not one step that I shall rise, but I will draw thee with me unto greatness. Thou shalt sit in my bosom as my soul. Incense the king, now being as thou art so near about him, and his confessor, that this G only is George, Duke of Clarence. Doctor, thou needst not my instruction. Thou hast a searching brain, a nimble spirit, able to master any man's affections. Affect it, sure. and bring it to pass once, I'll make thee the greatest Shaw that ever was.
My lord, I'm going by commandment unto the Marshalsea to Captain Stranguidge, for piracy of late condemned to die, there to confess him and his company. That done, I'll come with speed back to the king, and make no doubt but I'll effect the thing.
Farewell, gentle doctor.
Farewell, my lord of Gloucester.
And exit Dr. Shaw.
Let me awake my sleeping wits a while. Ha! The mark thou aim'st at, Richard, is a crown, and many stand betwixt thee and the same. What of all that? Doctor, play thou thy part. I'll climb up by degrees through many a heart.
And exit Gloucester. Yes, it's he's a true stamped villain as ever lived. That's what he be. That's what he be.
Stamped. Is
Stamped.
that what it was? Stamped.
Stamped. Yeah.
In the moment, I couldn't see what it could be. So.
Which God defend? Which God defend? Thunder, thunder, thundercats! Ho! It's a really interesting scene for the dynamics between the three of them, because they kind of. It's almost like Gloucester doesn't need to do asides to say how villainous he is, because they're all a little disingenuous in what they're saying, even to each other, and when they're in the room, and and it's this thing that they're talking about Clarence, and just go, yeah, Clarence, there might be some problems down the road, Clarence. You might have some issues here. It's a really interesting. This is the first time we've met all three of them. There's no easing us in. It's just these are the new people who we've not really heard of any mention, I think, particularly in the play so far. So, but everyone knows they're coming. We all know they're coming. Thoughts from the room, Lois.
Well, I just wondered about the doubling. Do you suppose either of those two scoundrels from the first part, that is the Constable and Burgundy, could be now playing Gloucester? I mean, it seems rather too much the same thing again, all these asides, but it seems the obvious character.
Yeah, or Louis. We got Louis free. Maybe he's Dr. Shaw. Maybe that's a deliberate doubling. I mean, I don't know enough about doubling practice, but you would think maybe they go for a slightly different kind of figure. But maybe it's just like, let's just keep the fun going. Let's keep the fun going. It's a really good question, Eric.
Maybe it's the actor who would be like, it's sort of the corresponding thing with Spicing and Falconbridge, isn't it? Where it was Falconbridge, Spicing, and Chubbs, I think. I can't remember his name. And then one of them became the hangman, and then sort of like Falconbridge and Spicing were left to face off, basically. So,
yeah, we have all these sort of perhaps echoing of types across them. A slightly different dynamic, even though it's still evil, moderately evil dynamic going on. Other thoughts? Helen?
When we started this scene, in fact, right up to the point where someone mentioned Stranguidge, I assumed we were in a completely different play. I mean, it was new themes, a new description of Edward.
He's not well.
No, a new dynamic, new politics.
It does feel like time's passed or something's happened in between, doesn't it? It feels like we should have a chorus just to quietly break that little moment up or something.
Yeah.
Lois again.
Actually, the time scheme is really funny in this anyway. I mean, the way that Dorset, for example, in the prison scene acts as if this is the first time he's ever seen Jane, when, clearly if her husband's been out of the country and has come back again, and Edward has been to France and come back again, quite a bit of time has been passing. And the same here, that we're not told anything, but obviously something must have happened. Yeah, I mean, if you were trying to make this realistic, you'd really have to have Edward have a sort of heart attack as he's leaving the room in that previous scene.
Yes, the traitors must die. Moment, go full on final episode of Morse.
Yes, but it isn't. If you think about the timing, sure, that Edward said they die now. Shaw's on his way to confess them. So, I mean, we're talking day, 2 days.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Yeah, that's what I mean about the funny time scheme. I mean, some things are happening very fast, and others are clearly taking their time.
It's an interesting question that perhaps when it comes to running this at pace, of seeing whether that leaps out at an audience or whether it just leaps out at us. It does feel like we need to have made sure that Gloucester and Clarence are standing in the background at some point in the past so that we identify them a bit with the court, because they just come out of left field. I think you're absolutely right there, feeling that they come from nowhere. But we're not unused to this play having a certain episodicness to it. I mean, a lot of the time this play doubles incredibly well. The reason we can read it with actually a relatively small room, even with the dynamics of doing it over several days and switching parts around constantly, is actually at any one time there's not that many people in a scene. This is very economical. It feels like it's for a space that isn't necessarily very big. Because there aren't that many. There are effects. There are things that you could call spectacle, but there's spectacle on a budget. I feel. So far in this play, all we've had is a load of people being shot at, and a few people wandering up and down. But even then, the people being shot at, there was only about 6 people on stage at that moment. And a lot of them were sort of lying on the floor going, ah! Anyway, sorry, Sarah.
I quite like the fact that this comes at you from nowhere, I have to say. It is startling, but I kind of like that. It's quite a modern thing, isn't it? I mean, the number of shows I watch on TV these days where, it's a 3-parter and suddenly someone turns up in their middle part and I'm like, wait, what? Who is he? Have we seen him before? And my other half has to pause the video while we have a talk about it. Like, who is he? What was? And then like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, it's him. Oh, right. So he's like, oh, and I mean, that's how it works with a lot of modern drama. And here we have it, in 15 whenever. And I personally think it works really well. It's going to keep the audience on their toes. It's a long play, so you want to just hit them with a little bit of dramatic suspense there in the middle, maybe. And this does this really well without actually needing to fall back on any kind of major action suspense drama. It doesn't have to chuck in any bizarre plot twist to keep the audience on their toes. It's just doing it with the characters.
And what I really like here is, that Shaw and Gloucester and Clarence are sort of filling in all those details about, what this prophecy means, who brought it to them. It's all the stuff you don't get in the true tragedy of Richard III. Clarence is just dead at the beginning. We're getting a bit of backstory, which is nice. Filling in those elements. Lois, and I think I saw Eric as well to follow.
Yeah, I was just thinking that although, of course, these are 3 new characters, at the same time, these probably are, as we thought, Burgundy, the Constable, and Louis of France, in which case the audience is already sort of clued in that here are 3 more people scheming, and, they can kind of see what kind of scene it's going to be. I just don't know how far that would work, but it's so much a repetition in a way. I mean, people with the sides, people who don't trust each other, people trying to use each other, and so on.
And yeah, Gloucester is very over the top, isn't he? I mean, there's no subtlety to this character at all. It's the moustache is this long.
Yeah.
He's great. Those asides, they were so funny. It's like I was kind of a bit blindsided by the first one, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing, are we? And it's great. It's like doing panto.
Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting how we kind of we have the sort of duplicitness on several levels. We've got Edward and the King of France and Jane Shore and her husband, and although it's not really their fault at that point, but I mean anyway, and the Queen Elizabeth and Jane and how that was reversed and stuff, and you kind of expect that there will be plotting and scheming and lots of other things.
Any other thoughts before we go into the final scene of this session? No, reasonably chunky one. We're going back to the shore, the other shores plot line, and we are going to Brackenbury enters with Vaux the keeper.
Why, Master Vaux, is there no remedy but instantly they must be led to death? Can it not be deferred till afternoon, or but 2 hours in hope of to get reprieve?
Master Lieutenant, 'tis in vain to speak. The king's incensed, and will not pardon them. The men are patient and resolved to die. The captain and that other gentleman have cast the die whether shall suffer first.
How fell the lot, to Stranguidge or to him?
The guiltless passenger must go first, Toot.
They are all quite guiltless from intent of ill.
And yet must die for doing of the deed. Besides, the Duke of Exeter found dead and naked floating up and down the sea. Twixt Calais and our coast is laid to them, that they shall rob and cast him overboard.
My soul be pawned, they never knew of it.
Well, bring them forth.
Stay them yet but an hour.
I dare not do. So, Robert Brackenbury, you are lieutenant of the Tower yourself, and know the peril of protracting time. Moreover, here's that pig thank, Doc Shaw. The Duke of Gloucester spaniels shriving them. Come bring them forth.
Poor Stranguidge, must thou die?
Enter one bearing a silver oar before Stranguidge, Shaw, and 2 or 3 more pinioned. And 2 or 3 with bills. There's also a hangman, and Dr. Shaw is accompanying them, I don't know, muttering something, etc.
I dare not say good morrow, but ill day, that Harry Stranguidge is thus cast away.
Good cousin Brackenbury, be as well content to see me die as I to suffer death. Be witness that I die an honest man, because my fact proves ill through ignorance. And for the Duke of Exeter, his death, so speed my soul as I am innocent. Here goes my grief. This guiltless gentleman, like Aesop's stork that dies for company, and came, God knows, but as a passenger. Ah, Master Flood, 1,000 floods of woe overflow my soul that thou must perish so.
Good captain, let no perturbation hinder our passage to a better world. This last breath's blast will waft our weary souls over death's gulf to heaven's most happy port. There is a little battle to be fought.
This while the hangman prepares, and Shaw at this speech mounts up the ladder.
Wherein, by lot, the leading must be mine. Second me, captain, and this bitter breakfast shall bring a sweeter supper with the saints.
This Christian patience at the point of death doth argue he hath led no wicked life, however heaven hath laid this cross on him. Well, Matthew Flood, for so thou call'st thyself, finish a good course as thou hast begun, and clear thy conscience by confession. What knowest thou of the Duke of Exeter's death?
So God respect the waygate of my soul, as I know nothing.
Then, concerning this for which thou diest, knew Stranguidge of the league betwixt the kings before he took that prize?
No, in my conscience.
Stranguidge, what say you? You see there's but a turn betwixt your lives, you must be next. Confess and save your soul concerning that wherein I questioned him. I am your ghostly father to absolve you of your sins if you confess the truth.
True, Dr. Shaw, and as I hope for heaven in that great day when we shall all appear, I neither knew how that good Duke came dead, nor of the league, till I had ta'en the prize. Neither was Flood, that innocent dying man, ever with me, but as a passenger.
More happy he. Well, Flood, forgive the world as thou wilt have forgiveness from the heavens.
Oh, so I do. And pray the world forgive what wrong I did whilst I therein did live. And now I pray you turn your pains to them and leave me private for a little space to meditate upon my parting hence.
Adieu, gentle flood, and we will pray for thee.
Pray for Hot, for Flood, but pray for Matthew Shaw, for Shaw covered with the cloak of flood. If I have sinned in changing of my name, forgive me, God. 'Twas done to hide my shame, and I forgive the world. King Edward first, that racked my state by winning of my wife, and though he would not pardon trespass small, in these, in me, God knows no fault at all. I pardon him, though guilty of my fall. Perhaps he would, if he had known 'twas I, but 20 deaths I rather wish to die, oh, than live beholding for 1 minute's breath to him that living wounded me with death. Death of my joy, and hell of my defame, which now shall die under this borrowed name. Jane, God forgive me, even as I forgive, and pray thou mayst repent while thou dost live. I am as glad to leave this loathed light as to embrace thee on our marriage night. To die unknown, thus is my greatest good, that Matthew Shaw's not hanged, but Matthew Flood, for floods of woe have washed away the shore, that never wife nor kin shall look on more. Now, when you will, I am prepared to go.
And enter Jockie, running and crying, except he's muted, so we can't hear it.
Hold! Hold! Half a speed! Untie, untruss! Pull down, pulled off! God save the king! Off with the halters! Hence with the prisoners! A pardon! A pardon!
Good news unlooked for. Welcome, gentle friend. Who brings the pardon?
Stay, first let me blow. My mistress! Mistress Shaw, she brings the pardon! Off with these bands! Bestow them on the hangman! My mistress made me run the nearest way o'er the fields. She rides apace the highway. She's in hand by this. Sarah, ye that preach, come down. Let Dr. Shaw have your place. He's the better scholar. Mistress Shaw brings a new lesson for you.
Oh, I had read my latest lesson well, had he been ready to have said amen.
Pointing to the hangman.
Now shall I live to see my shame again.
Descends the ladder.
Oh, had I died unwitting to my wife, rather than see her, though she bring me life.
Enter Jane Shaw in haste in her riding cloak and safeguard with a pardon in her hand.
Thus, I see that even my smallest stay had lost my labour and cast them away. God knows I hasted all that e'er I might. Here, Master Vaux, King Edward greets ye well. His gracious pardon frees this gentleman and all his company from shameful death.
God save the king, and God bless Mistress Shaw.
Amen. And keep these from coming here any more.
You must discharge them, paying off their fees, which, for I fear their store is very small, I will defray. Hold, here, take purse and all. Nay, Master Vaux, his gold, if not enough, send to me. I will pay you royally.
Lady, in the behalf of all the rest, with humble thanks, I yield myself your slave. Command their service and command my life.
No, Captain Stranguidge, let the king command your lives and service who have given you life. These and such offices conscience bids me do.
Pity that ere awry she trod her shoe.
Oh, had that conscience pricked when love provoked.
Lady, the last but not the least in debt to your devotion for my cousin's life, I render thanks. Yet thanks is but a breath. Command me, madam, during life. Old Brackenbury vows for you to stand, whilst I have limbs or any foot of land.
Thus is her glory, builded on the sand.
Thanks, good Master Lieutenant of the Tower. Sirrah, prepare my horse. Why stay you here? Pray, commend me to my noble friend, the Duke of Clarence. Now your prisoner. Bid him not doubt, the king's displeasure past. I hope to gain him favour and release.
God grant ye may. He's a noble gentleman.
My patron Gloucester will cross it if he can.
Exit Shaw, Dr. Shaw that is. Enter a messenger, the moment he's been waiting for.
Where's Mistress Shaw? Lady, I come in post. The king hath had a very dangerous fit since you came from him. Twice his majesty hath swooned, and with much ado revived, and still his breath will give him leave to speak. He calls for you. The queen and the lords have sent to seek ye haste unto his grace, or else I fear you'll never see his face.
Oh, God defend! Oh, good friends, pray for the king. More bitter are the news which he doth bring than those were sweet I brought to you of late. If Edward die, confounded is my state. I'll haste unto him, and will spend my blood to save his life or do him any good.
And exit Jane Shaw and the messenger.
And so would I for thee, hadst thou been true. But if he die, bid all thy pomp adieu.
Believe me, but I do not like these news of the king's dangerous sickness.
No, nor I. Captain and Master Flood and all the rest, I do rejoice your pardon was obtained before these were inauspicious news. If the king die, the state will soon be changed. Master Lieutenant, you'll go to the Tower. I'll take my leave. Gallants, God be with you all.
Exeunt Vaux and the train.
God be with ye, Master Vaux. I wis ye have lost good guests.
Ye shall be my guest for a night or two, cousin, till your own lodging be prepared. But tell me, sir, what means hath that Master Flood?
I cannot tell. I'll ask him if ye will.
Do so, and if his fortunes be debased, I'll entertain him, if he'll dwell with me, on good condition.
Master Matthew Flood, hear ye my cousin Brackenbury's mind? He hath conceived such liking of your parts that if you means surmount not his suppose, he'll entertain ye gladly at the Tower, to wait on him and put ye in great trust.
In what I undertake, I will be just, and hold me happy if my diligence may please so worthy a gentleman as he. Whatever my fortunes have been, they are now, such as to service make their master bow.
No, Flood, more like a friend and fellow mate, I mean to use thee, than a servitor, and place thee in some credit at the Tower, and give thee means to live in some good sort.
I thank ye, sir. God grant I may deserve it.
Cousin, and all your crew, come home with me, where after sorrow we may merry be.
And exeunt Brackenbury and Stranguidge, and Shaw is left alone.
The Tower will be a place of secret rest, where I may hear good news and bad, and use the best. God bless the king. A worse may wear the crown, and then Jane Shaw. Thy credit will come down, for though I'll never bed nor board with thee, yet thy destruction wish I not to see, because I loved thee when thou wast my wife, not for now saving my disdained life, which lasts too long. God grant us both to mend. Well, I must in, my service to attend.
And he exits, and that's as far as we're getting this session. Another series of swift turnarounds and changes of direction. Likes to keep these, even though they're long scenes, the scenes, or longer scenes within the context of the play, really likes to work them up. So we get Shaw getting himself, climbing up, getting ready to be hanged, and then last minute reprieve. And is Matthew Shaw happy? Is Mr. Flood happy? No. Sarah's rolling her eyes. And there is an element. It does get a bit wearing of Shaw just going, "Oh, woe is me! Oh, the shame that has been brought on me." It does get wearing after a while. It has to be said. But yeah, the king's not well. King's not well. Edward IV might be not around for much longer. I'm looking forward to his deathbed speech. I'm looking forward to that. That would be good. Okay. Thoughts about that scene? Lots going on. Jockie getting his moment of shoutiness. I don't know how much of that came through. Eric.
I was going to say this scene is like a medley of all the previous characters, except the Constable and King Louis of France.
We do get through a fair few people we've actually met before. It is nice to have all these various returning people. Nobody wants to kill these people, of course. It's like everyone at the tower's going, "Whew, thank goodness for that. Look, you've been pardoned. Let's move the process on before someone changes their mind or dies." Other thoughts from the room? Helen.
Being on the point of death and knowing that you are about to die does actually do something to you. And afterwards, you are not necessarily, if you come through it, you're not necessarily throwing a party.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Quite, yes.
It does kind of, you tend to be a little quiet.
Sarah, you're muted. So,
to be fair, though, it doesn't seem to do a lot to him. I mean, yeah, okay, I absolutely take your point about the fact that he's not necessarily going to want to go and party. But he comes down and, like, you know, the pardon's granted and everyone else goes off and he's just immediately back to whining. I mean, you'd think that he would have at least stopped whining for a couple of minutes just to draw breath. But no, he's still whinging.
I think he's got a lot to whinge about. My problem is that when I read a character, I tend to empathise.
Oh, don't worry. This is exactly the dynamic I love.
And I am invested in Matthew Shaw. I think he is. I think he is much put upon.
Lois.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt reading him in part one. And also, I think we just don't appreciate what being cuckolded meant in that period. I mean, it was just the absolute ultimate in humiliation. You know, that's why he wants to leave the country as soon as he discovers that his wife has gone to court. I mean, he doesn't even know for sure what's happened. He just knows that since she's gone off to court, she's obviously going to be the king's mistress. It's the end of his life. I mean, he gives his business to someone else. He leaves the country. He doesn't want to be around. He doesn't want to be recognized by the king or by her. I mean, it's just complete. It's like annihilation, really.
Yeah, and it's that sense of you know, he is there literally about to be hanged, and then his wife turns up and it's like, you are the last person I wanted to see me in this moment. You know, it couldn't, you know, she doesn't recognise him still, of course, you know, cloaks or whatever. Other thoughts from the room before about this scene specifically before we start moving into final thoughts? Stephen.
Just back to the Jockie thing. It just doesn't fit. The lines that were given to Jockie. I mean, it seemed to me there was only really one way to do them, and it just doesn't fit with the rest of the scene. It was really weird because, you know, everybody carried on being quite grave and quite sensible, and I'm just wondering about that, you know, how that might have worked. And particularly the, you know, he doesn't speak for about a page, and then Jane just goes, "Are you still here?" You know, and he's kind of completely sort of dismissed. You know, why stay ye? Go and sort a horse out or something like that. And it's a really peculiar dynamic because the lines seem to be so kind of big and boisterous. I don't know if you picked up that.
There was a hint. There was just a hint there, yeah.
But it really, that kind of thing, and it's just such a short insertion. It's really weird. The scene would kind of be better without him in it, I think.
I like the fact that he stops the scene. I think there is the moment that, he is running on with full, and I love the stay first, let me blow. It's just like, give me a moment.
The other thing is that it's just sort of part building for a clown.
Yeah.
And that he's kind of being exuberant and boisterous while everybody else is saying these beautiful lines, until Jane just turns to him and says, haven't you got a horse to be sticking some oats down or something? And he's kind of put back in his box, put back in his place. That's the only way I can actually work out the function of it.
The clown isn't really touching the sides much here, is he? He's coming on and coming off very quickly. He's not really making a mark in the same in scenes. He's in scenes. He is doing a function, but then he's not really engaging with the rest of what's going on. Sarah, then Eric.
I love that though. I mean, I totally agree with Stephen about how he functions, what he does, but I totally disagree with Stephen as to what the effect is, because I absolutely loved it. I loved the fact that you had all this nobleness, and then he suddenly comes in, crashes into the sea, goes, oh, wait. We have this really comic moment, moment of great import, but that's really, really funny. It's like total bathos. And then we go back to kind of, noble people being noble together. I just thought that was great. I thought it was kind of, disruptive is a word that gets used a lot these days. And I think this is a really great example of dramatic disruption. I think it works.
I also quite like the fact that Jockie is allowed to come on and say what we stated earlier, which is Dr. Shaw, Jane Shaw. They sound really similar. Let Dr. Shaw have your place. He's the better scholar. Mistress Shaw brings a new lesson for you. I mean, it's explicitly sort of pointing out, it's a terrible homophone for us to be playing around with. Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say basically what Sarah said, that it's like he's intended to interrupt the scene. So we don't really and then obviously they kind of didn't work out exactly how he was going to exit, because he's not a messenger who turns up and goes, we have to go do this. But so obviously they were just like, hey,
we've got this spare character. We've got this guy who can do this job in, who's free? You'll do.
Well, yeah, because otherwise the messenger comes on and then it kind of... you can't have two messengers in the same scene. It's not as important as the King of France, as the jesting that happened yesterday.
It's one of those elements of sort of going, well, maybe there's some clown interference in the text here, is that, it was supposed to just be come on and stop it, and it got padded, but couldn't disrupt the scene too much in terms of changing anybody else's line around him. I doubt that's true, but, I throw it in there. Lynn.
I can't speak to intents. That's, we can't backform what an author was trying to do. But I think what Jockie's appearance, the effect that has, is to kind of remind us what the world that we're in terms of mood or genre, that this is not a real tragedy. This is not actually a tragedy. This is, what we would now call soap opera, or maybe, they would have thought of it as tragic comedy at the time. I don't know if that term had been used yet, but the comic character comes on to save the day rather than a kind of more straight messenger. Reminds us that this is not a tragedy. This is something else.
Lois.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's just that this kind of play where you've got certain kinds of characters that keep appearing. I mean, it's the kind of thing that literary critics often really pan and say this is just a crowd-pleasing play, that people are doing what they're doing for stage effect and it doesn't mean anything. And yet it's obviously enormously enjoyable just because of the sheer variety and unexpectedness of so much of what happens. I would guess that Jockie is probably doing something during that scene. I mean, he does... If he says that Shore, who has been, about to be hanged and has been preaching, should come down because Dr. Shaw should go up there and preach. I mean, he could obviously do something at that point. He could perhaps have some sort of byplay with the hangman. I don't know. There are a lot of possibilities if you're a clown. So that might be what's going on. That might even be why Jane, looks at him and says, "Haven't you got something better to do?"
I mean, the thing is, he's on stage for about 50 lines. Some of them are actually his. He's not there for very long. He is a moment in the scene, so maybe we're overplaying his. He has an impact at the beginning when he enters, which any character doing that function needs to have. Gets a bit of comic business and then is quickly dismissed. So again, that's one that maybe in production or in a part of a flow we can look at in better detail. We're now into extra time, so it's final thoughts about this particular tranche of play. In relation to if you were here for earlier sessions, this play so far, or the previous play so far, or all the plays so far. It's you have all sorts of ways of engaging with it. Again, that question of what one might want to do with this in practical sense, general overall thoughts. So I will start with, who shall I pick on first? I will pick on Sarah first.
Love it. Loved it yesterday. Loved part one. Still love it. I was interested by what you said earlier about the fact that it is a relatively small cast. You could actually put this on in a small space and get away with it, which is nice. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I'm just very much enjoying it and totally in awe of this playwright.
Eric, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's very sort of similar to the first part, isn't it? It's kind of almost a mirror play, almost, except with a few different characters and a few different things. But it's interesting I think it is interesting to watch, like, the Shore family drama unraveling on stage compared to, Edward, considering it's supposed to be about Edward. And like he doesn't get as much stage time, I feel, compared to the others. And I think it could be an interesting way to look into it, sort of like to let people into the play rather than sort of, I mean, history plays are interesting for the history element as well, but is this a history play or is it sort of big questions, kind of worms?
Yeah. No, there's arisen a question about titling here and what impressions it's giving you. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of good stuff coming up. Edward's death, I'm sure, is going to be extremely exciting. Give him a good send off when he goes. Stephen, final thoughts.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the verse. I thought Helen's reading was absolutely wonderful. It really brought it out. It's so clearly put together. I think it's so beautifully structured, those long speeches. So I guess that's my main takeaway, really. That even though the action is kind of switchback, isn't it? It is so kind of intense, but it seems to pull it off. It seems to pull off this kind of sensational plotting alongside these gorgeous moments of sort of interiority and reflection. So like everybody else, I really like the play, and I think today's session was great.
And it's not only liking the play overall. There's so many wonderful bits in it where I'm sort of thinking, that's detachable. I mean, the power dynamic in that scene with the Queen and Jane, it's just fantastic. And going, that's got legs. That's definitely, there's got to do. Even if we can't manage a full production, we can definitely pull some of the irons out of this fire. Andrew, thought I don't know if you were here for the part one. I can't remember if you were for a couple of sessions. But either way, what do you think of the show so far? You're muted at the moment.
I've thoroughly enjoyed the piece. It's been an interesting play to read part of. There's lots of interesting places that you could take out, as you say, and make some really good duologues between different characters. I particularly like the Queen and Jane. I thought that was a really nice dynamic part. And I agree with everyone else. It's a thoroughly enjoyable piece. Lots of very interesting roles. I love Shore, Shore. I think that's a lovely role. Very fun, and lots of different statuses throughout the piece. So yeah, it's good.
Excellent. Lynn, how was it for you?
Oh, yeah, I'm really liking both of these. I was in on some or all of the first part readings, and I was impressed with that text, and I am not disappointed with part 2. Really, you know, the wheels are turning in my head about kind of more logistical problems. Both of Edward the Fourth Part 1, Edward the Fourth Part 2 are longish texts, and I think you need to do them both. So how would you do this? Would you do this in some sort of virtual medium and have 4 episodes of about an hour and a half or so a piece? Part 1, part 1, part 1, part 2, part 2, part 1, and part 2, part 2, if you follow me. Or, you know, if you did it live, how would you do that? Because you've got, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours of stage time, and you really don't want to take your editor's pruning shears to it too severely, because almost every moment of it is worth preserving. So how do you deliver all of this great stuff to an audience? I mean, I love the fact that it's an emotional roller coaster. I mean, I feel a little manipulated as an audience member sometimes. But I kind of just love that soap opera quality. It was like, oh, breaking hearts. Oh, this is an impossible situation. I've been enjoying that.
Yeah, there are moments where I mean, the whole thing. We love the scene with Queen Elizabeth and Jane. That doesn't mean it isn't horribly manipulative. It is overtly manipulative to make you think it's going one way and then another, and really push the envelope a little bit on that. So yeah, we're being manipulated, but sometimes being manipulated's fun. I really respond to that question. That question of how to do it. I really love the idea of it being done as a big event theatre thing, because it's at least 6 hours uncut, if not longer. These are long plays. These are some of the longest texts that we've done, and that's why we're doing it over 4 sessions. Yes, some trims, but I wouldn't want to do very much apart from just minor pruning and try and keep the integrity of the whole. I mean, we've talked about doing something, it would make a good television series. It would make a good ongoing series because it has a nice episodic quality to it, so you could curate the material in quite a satisfying fashion and play around with that. But yeah, it's just got so much potential. Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I really love these plays. This episodic quality is really interesting. I mean, I was struck by the fact that just as yesterday's play was really almost self-contained, this one is almost self-contained. It is the story of these guys captured at sea and about to be hanged, and then released through the intercession of the Queen and Jane, and with a sort of suggestion, meanwhile, of something brewing with the King's brothers. But what puzzles me about it actually is how it could have been written like this, because as you say, these are 2 very long plays, longer than most of the plays of the period, and they do seem as if they could be taken apart and performed, in smaller chunks. I wonder if that's what happened. I mean, whether they could actually have been done like that for some reason. I mean, the other thing about them is they're incredibly simple as far as staging requirements, and that bit that struck me yesterday, where Burgundy and the constable have a scene, and then I guess they go off, but the next stage direction says that these characters from the English court are meeting Burgundy, which suggests that, in fact, they just come on and he stays there, even though the scene seems to have switched to a completely different place. I mean, this seems to me to be an unlocalized stage where people just, tremendously fluid action.
Yes, I was thinking the other day about its episodicness and whether that's something to do with its initial venue, and whether there's an expectation that the audience, there might be stages of entrance of audience, that there might be opportunities for people to duck out in a much more overt sense of, there's always a bit of a sense of the potentiality of selective inattention, but actually structuring the entertainment so that you could turn up half an hour late and just go into the next part, or dip out after the bit you like. I'm just wondering whether there's something about that initial performance history that might connect with that. I again wouldn't go too far with that because that's just me thinking off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean it's definitely longer than the stuff we've been doing, because this is a good 10 years later than a lot of the texts we've been doing. Plays are increasingly going to be getting to this kind of length. And the question of what we cut becomes more pressing, becomes more a question of practicality rather than saying we don't like this bit. It's going, something's got to go if we're going to squeeze this into an evening, and that those decisions start becoming more pressing the further we go on in history. Helen, final thoughts?
Well, first, having said how much I'm enjoying it and how much I enjoyed the previous one, I'd like to raise certain problems that keep on coming up to me. One is that what we have here is a chronicle history rather than a play. We've got a dramatized chronicle history. So it's because it seems to me that with a play, you have some sort of unity of theme. Well, quite often you have some, all right, if you're not in the early modern period, you have some sort of unity of theme. But I feel that if you remember way back then, we had the apprentices and of London, hooray. And that's all totally disappeared.
Which disappeared in this play. I mean, to be fair, there was a unity of that in the first play. I mean,
well, only for a period.
We still had London. London continued. We didn't have to stick with the apprentices.
Yes. London was a major part of it. Yes. I admit, I'd forgotten. London was a character in the first play. But my feeling is that it lacks a sort of overarching narrative, if you see what I mean. I know it's got an overarching narrative. It lacks an overarching feel to it. The world of the play is not the world of the play. It's many, many, many different worlds of the play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree on the terms of the theme, because a lot of the themes continue. I mean, on a thematic level, I think this is actually very unified. It is true that narratively it jumps around a lot, and at least in the sense that they're quite willing to dump characters for excessive lengths of time. In the first play, dumped Edward IV immediately after we met him, and this play is going to dump him fairly soon. No spoilers there, people. We've just been told he's not well, and so yeah, it does play fast and loose on characters in that sense, and the way the narrative moves around. Eleanor, you have been chosen to present the final thought. No pressure, but
I was
better be good.
Say absolutely no pressure whatsoever, is there? I'm not going to make anyone hate me by saying that I have adored the scenes that we have read. I know I wasn't in yesterday, so I'm coming into this completely stone cold blind, but I love this, and I love the way it's written. It seems faster paced than some previous plays that we've read, so I really like the pace of it. I do love that scene with Jane and Elizabeth, because it just has that moment of, yes, sister solidarity. Oh gosh, in 1500s, yes. I mean, it does change halfway through and you go, oh, you were so close. You were so close to feminism, so close. And you changed it. But apart from that, it's so good. And yeah, it does. It pulls you where you think it's going. It suddenly just changes. And you're pulled around so many times that by the end of it, you need a gin and tonic and a sit down. But that's like really good. And I weirdly like that in some way. So yeah, I have nothing but praise for this. Absolutely fantastic.
Excellent. So we are halfway through the second part. We have 2 more sessions. Actually, we're slightly more than halfway through. The sessions get slightly shorter as we go in terms of the amount of text. So, if you want to find out what happens next, read a history book. You'll know what happens next. Broadly speaking, stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to go down. So, there'll be winners. There'll be losers. There'll be laughter. There'll be tears. There'll be many things. All that remains is to thank all the readers today for all their efforts, and goodbye.
Bye.